So many DACs and amps to choose from, and yet the hi-fi companies keep dishing them out month after month. Frankly, we have plenty of excellent options in the market already, some of which are under the $100 range. FiiO has recently released their newest budget DAC amp combo called the K11. This desktop unit costs $130. The folks at Apos Audio sent me the K11 to review. As you know, Apos sells lots of audiophile gear from popular brands at competitive prices. If you're looking for a new toy this year, check out Apos. Now, let's get on with the K11 review. The K11 comes with a single CS43198 DAC chip. This particular DAC is a true workhorse and has been implemented into many audiophile products. For example, Topping uses this DAC in their more expensive D70 Pro, and not too long ago, Creative Labs released the X5 with a dual-chip implementation of the CS43198. The K11 supports all high-resolution PCM and a DSD up to 256. According to the Cirrus Logic spec sheet, this is also the maximum supported audio, so FiiO is not artificially limiting the DAC's capabilities. And of course, there's no MQA decoding if that matters to you. The K11 has both single-ended and balanced 4.4mm outputs. The device has USB-C and optical inputs. It also has coaxial in and out, plus a standard RCA out. FiiO claims that the K11 will provide a whopping 1.4 watts at 32 ohms from the balanced output at high gain. Single-ended performance is capped at 520 milliwatts at 32 ohms. Unfortunately, there's a huge drop-off in power when you jump to 300 ohms, whether it's on single-ended or balanced. I was not able to find independent measurements for the K11, so I don't know if the promised power is actually what you will get. Sadly, hi-fi companies have a history of inflating power output numbers, and we have to take what they say with a dose of salt. Typical of modern DACs and amps, the K11 has reportedly very low THD. Now, the fact is, you cannot hear THD below 1%, so the ever lower threshold we are shown in the spec sheets is not all that impressive in reality. As for physical design, the K11 takes the Mac Mini style. It's a short, squat square. There's a bright screen which shows resolution, volume, gain, and connection type. The rotary knob functions as a selector switch for the menu. The front panel houses the headphone outputs, obviously. The top of the unit has the FiiO logo, which is backlit with LEDs. You can select among 9 color presets from within the menu. All the colors are quite bright. You can also choose to have the lights strobe or stay constant. Finally, you can control the brightness among some preset values, from 0 to maximum. There's not much to say about the design. It is simple, attractive enough, and quite functional. Overall, you get a surprisingly compact package with plenty of potential. For every DAC or amp review, I conduct the same tests. Simply listening and making judgment calls I don't think is enough, as subjective impressions alone can be incredibly misleading. On the other hand, looking just at measurements can give a false sense of knowledge when you have not actually used the device. I combine measurements, when available, with subjective listening impressions, but I make my listening tests as repeatable and science-backed as I can. This is why I rigorously conduct A/B comparisons, explain what I did, and encourage others to do the same. To that end, I tested the K11 in multiple phases. In Phase 1, I used the K11 as one of my go-to devices for several weeks. I plugged it into my Mac and Windows computers. I listened to high-resolution lossless files, streamed lossy content, and consumed a variety of material. I used numerous headphones and IEMs through both the balanced and single-ended outputs. The idea in this phase was to determine if the device exhibited any odd behavior, incompatibility, or defects through regular use. In Phase 2, I compared the K11 against some alternatives. This included the dropped 789 paired with the Soncause LAQX-D1. Remember that one? The Rupert Neve headphone amp paired with the SMSL SU9N, which was not too long ago the cream of the crop. The Topping DX5 Lite, the RME 80i2 DAC, and the Matrix Mini i Pro 3. I plugged each device into my Windows and Mac systems and sent signal to two at once using Voicemeeter Banana on Windows and multi-output device on Mac. I plugged the single-ended output into a passive AB switch and used various headphones and IEMs to conduct numerous hours-long comparisons over several days. I tried to volume match using the built-in amps of the devices when available and through system volume controls. The goal was to determine if the K11 presented an obviously different sound from the competitors. In Phase 3, I plugged low and high impedance headphones into the K11 to figure out if the device could drive them. I used dynamic and planar headphones and IEMs for this portion of the test. Throughout this process, I used many headphones and IEMs, and that list includes the Focal Elex, Beardynamic DT880, Avantone Planar, audeze LCD2 Classic, the LCD1, Olo S5X, Moondrop Aria, hifi T2, 7Hz Timeless, Final Audio B2, and many others. I strongly encourage people to conduct these types of true volume-matched A/B tests at home. For about $25, you can find the necessary off-the-shelf components to create your own test bench. If you want less reviewer and fanboy BS, I think you need to establish a reliable, repeatable testing method that mitigates against audiophile nonsense. Let's delve into the results of the tests here with the K11. In Phase 1, I used the K11 as one of my go-to devices for a few weeks. I tried to determine if the K11 exhibited any faults or issues worth mentioning. And I'm glad to say that this device never caused any problems. It connected immediately to my Mac and Windows computers. I never heard any buzzing through either the single-ended or balanced outputs. The menu functioned quickly. The unit never randomly shut down or got too hot. Even when I used sensitive IEMs like my Campfire Audio Andromeda, the FiiO did not create any audible distortion or hiss. The gain swapping occurs on the fly. In other words, it's immediate upon finalizing the setting. The unit does not need to stop playing audio first. In short, I found the experience with the K11 very pleasant. It's a simple device that does exactly what FiiO promised, except of course, I can't verify that the K11 actually outputs as much power as the company claims. Now, on to Phase 2. This is where I compared the K11 against the various devices I mentioned previously. The goal was to determine if the K11 has any obvious differences in sound signature or quality. Every time I compare DACs and amps, I emphasize how important it is to do proper A/B tests. When we listen using any other method, we are far more susceptible to false positives or false negatives. Our short-term memories are notoriously wrong, and it is a scientific fact that humans struggle to remember accurately what a sound actually sounded like. The reason people should perform these types of true A/B tests is because there's far too much hype in the audiophile community. DACs and amps get over-idolized as some kind of magic beans that will elevate your listening experience into the stratosphere. It doesn't work like that. So instead of wasting time and money on purchases that, frankly, are usually not real improvements over a cheaper product, approach audiophile products with a lot more circumspection and skepticism. With my lecture out of the way, once again, I can say that FiiO has produced a neutral, transparent DAC amp. Hooray! It's as neutral as all the other equipment I compared against. When volume matched using passive switch boxes and testing with various headphones and IEMs over many hours, the results were consistent. The K11 sounded no different from the other neutral competition. Naturally, on those occasions when I did not have a precise volume match setup, the K11 either sounded clearer or had more impactful bass or less, but as soon as I more correctly matched volumes, any such distinctions disappeared. I verified this by comparing the K11 with my Monolith Liquid Platinum and Quad PA1, both of which are tube amps. And yes, when the parameters are changed and I tested against tube-affected products, there was a noticeable difference in sound compared to the K11. In fact, with a slight modification through computer EQ to one of the competitive products, I could hear a difference when the K11 was not similarly altered. The short of it is this: The K11 is a neutral, transparent DAC amp that sounds just as clear as products that cost many times more. Finally, in Phase 3, I paired a wide variety of headphones and iamps with the K11. The idea was to determine if the K11 struggled to drive any of them. No, the K11 worked quite well. It should go unsaid, but there's no IEM that will require the crazy amount of power modern headphone amps provide, and that was consistent here with the K11. The K11 also had no trouble at all driving my numerous planar magnetic headphones, including the audeze LCD1, LCD2, LCD2C, LCD-X, LCD3, LCD4, Headphone planar, and a splattering of chi-fi headphones I had on hand. Boy, that's too many. But what about the Modhouse Argon? Now, my Argons are not wired for balanced connection. If yours are, then I have a strong suspicion you will not have any problems driving them through the K11. On single-ended, I don't think the K11 really provided sufficient driving power. The bass was not quite as clear or impactful, the vocals were not as clear as when I plugged the Argons into my Burson 3XR, which has the ludicrous 2 watts at around 50 ohms on single-ended. Nevertheless, the K11 did get the Argons quite loud at high gain with the volume set at 30. Ultimately, the K11 performed very well. It has simple functionality, is small to fit anywhere on my desk, and at least during my time with it, worked flawlessly. There was a time when shit offered more for the money spent. Their stack combo of the Heresy and Modi at $200 provided so much power and PCM support that I personally didn't see much point in choosing topping or SMSL for those on a budget. But thankfully, we've been getting some really great competition in this price bracket. The K11 is the most recent entry in this respect and, in my opinion, clearly stands apart from shit. At this point, given how much shit charges for a comparable product, I think that the FiiO K11 is a far better alternative to a shit stack. The K11 has a few quirks, things that don't necessarily cause big issues but maybe are worth pointing out. For example, the LED logo is very gaudy. The logo is hardly appealing, and constantly being reminding of it through harsh LED isn't helpful. Another minor but annoying issue is with the screen. Once again, we are forced to stare at the audio resolution as the focal point. I don't understand why these companies force us to look at that big, bold script. The gain and volume level and the output selection are far more relevant information that should be placed larger and more prominently than the audio resolution. It's a simple thing that could be fixed with a firmware update, or at least allow people to select that as one of the options in the menu. And of course, once again, we have another modern amp DAC with no software integration. With all the expertise in China, you think somebody there would copy what Sound Blaster has done with their integrated desktop software. But despite these gripes, the K11 remains a fantastic product. If you want a powerful, small, and transparent amp DAC, the K11 at $130 is a no-brainer. It is absolutely worth the money if you are in the market.